What do you think came first? The chicken or the egg? Water or ice? Undertale or... For a while now, for some people since Chapter 1, and for others only as recently as the last few months, UTDR fans have questioned the conditions of Deltarune's world. Is it an alternate reality or a timeline? Is this post-pacifist? Post-genocide? Is it a prequel? Sequel? With a slew of strange parallels to Undertale's story, as well as many of the same characters, as well as Toby Fox saying during the Undertale 6th anniversary stream that,
"Even now I don't call the sequel. Call it a sequel."
It was Toby asking us to call it a sequel because that seems like a trap, and I don't want the sword to come back out.
No, it is in the same series.
it's no wonder that people are so hungry to draw connections. Is it fruitless? Is there going to end up being no connection at all between the worlds, just reused assets and concepts? I don't think it's that simple at all, but to really explain why and what the connection between these two worlds is, we have to explore the idea of world creation within the context of UTDR, and another thing. But let's start with UTDR. What does it mean to create a world? Are stories worlds? Is a game a world? The word game carries many different definitions, but the most broad seems to be, quote, actively engaged in for diversion or amusement. World also falls into the same camp, but in reference to the universe is, quote, the system of created things. It could be argued then that small instances of systems of created things can also be quantified as worlds. Think something as simple as your Minecraft world. Undertale for many people was a groundbreaking game in narrative. Its lovable character writing, quirky scenes, cute art, and fresh mechanics neatly infused many of Toby Fox's influences into one tight package, quite visibly. Touhou and Earthbound are two of the most directly visible inspirations through the dialogue and combat mechanics, but so many other inspirations sit among them while carrying variable weight and influence. A huge part of what made it so groundbreaking, however, beyond its mechanics, is that Undertale's narrative treats its world as something that is living and responsive, far beyond the existence of the two most well-known routes, true pacifist and genocide. Most decisions made by the player have an impact that ripples out and returns to them. The game has 93 neutral endings, accounting for different specific combinations of kills, with each offering a different phone call from the cast. I'd go as far as to say a lot of the weight behind True Pacifist as an ending for those immersed in the narrative lies in the fact that the world is directly responding to your kindness. While Undertale's narrative does recognize itself as a world, it does also recognize itself as a game. Flowey and Sans are the clearest examples of this. In the case of Flowey, it comes in the form of referring directly to game mechanics and inputs from the player, as well as referring to the player as a standalone entity. Flowey has also used game mechanics himself, both during and before the plot of the game. In Sans' case, it's at points more direct, with him directly explaining the stat acronyms to us. It can be a bit more ambiguous, however. Depending on how it's read, there is also subtext to imply that Sans is not speaking to Frisch during his fight, but instead to the player. On the note of genocide, though, there is one more character who recognizes the narrative as a game. This character, of course, is Kara. During the end of the genocide route, Kara makes direct reference to many aspects of the game. They say, "Together, we eradicated the enemy and became strong. HP, attack, defense, gold, execution points, level of violence. Every time a number increases, that feeling, that's me. Kara. Now, We have reached the absolute. There is nothing left for us here. Let us erase this pointless world and move on to the next. After this, of course, you're given the choices erase and do not. We'll come back to this later. Dialogue will change, but regardless of your choice, Kara will attack the player, or at the very least, will sing at the screen, doing infinite 9s in damage and closing the game itself. As some of you may know, Toby originally wanted to have Undertale uninstall itself from one's computer following this, but this is not how it played out. When you reopen the game, you're greeted with only two things: darkness and howling wind. After waiting 10 minutes, Kara, with no dialogue box, says, "Interesting. You want to go back to the world you destroyed. It was you who pushed everything to its edge. It was you who led the world to destruction. But you cannot accept it. You think you are above consequences." You are then presented with a yes or no prompt. Yes, yielding, exactly. Then they will say, after a delay, "Perhaps we can reach a compromise. You still have something I want. Give it to me, and I will bring this world back." If you agree, Kara says, "Then it is agreed. You will give me your soul." And agreeing again yields, "Then it is done." You can then proceed through the game as normal, only seeing changes after the completion of another true pacifist or genocide run. If you disagree, Kara will leave, only to return if you reopen the game and wait the full 10 minutes. They will return with the exact same offer as last time. This scene does have a direct parallel in True Pacifist, although with considerably less dire conditions. Flowey says, "There is one thing, one last threat, one being with the power to erase everything. Everything everyone's worked so hard for. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? That's right, I'm talking about you." Both main routes, for whatever that's worth, 93 neutral endings do not dictate to me a concept of a stable canon, directly reference the player's ability to affect the world itself. These are the most present acknowledgments of the fourth wall in the game, going so far as to address the idea that the player themselves has a degree of deeper control over this reality. So, we know that Undertale expresses an in-universe, diegetic approach to the creation of worlds. Sans also refers to this, just in a much smaller capacity, almost as if he's lacking the same degree of insight that Asriel and Kara have, with the defining factor of this insight probably being determination. He says, "Our reports showed a massive anomaly in the time-space continuum, timelines jumping left and right, stopping and starting, until suddenly, everything ends." That's your fault, isn't it? You can't understand how this feels, knowing that one day, without any warning, it's all going to be reset. He does know something, but he's missing pieces. If this world was just a fabrication, it would be hard to connect to though, impossible even. If the narrative didn't take its own existence seriously, how could we, the audience? So, how do you flesh out a world? You create a history for this world, a mythos. Nothing can exist without an origin point. So, solely within the context of Undertale, where do its origins lie? We know about the war between monsters and humans, and we know about Kara and Asriel. We know of the amalgamates and determination experiments. These are clearly stated aspects of the narrative, but the scars of the missing aspects of the story still remain. An obvious example for those locked into the story is Gaster. His existence only exists in pieces scattered across the game itself, across fun values and lines of code, but a less obvious example that has really large plot implications is the Deltarune itself. Gerson, the only person in the game to talk about the Deltarune, says, "You don't know what that is? What are they teaching you kids in school nowadays? That's the Deltarune, the emblem of our kingdom. The kingdom of monsters. That emblem actually predates written history. The original meaning has been lost to time. All we know is that the triangle symbolizes us monsters below, and the winged circle above symbolizes something else. Most people say it's the angel from the prophecy. We know for certain that aspects of this world's history have been lost. Even within just the base game, this was present, but as more pieces of Undertale were released to the world, things only continued to get more strange. The first instance of this was with the PS4 release of Undertale, which brought with it the Dog Shrine. Outside of a harrowing inflatable arm tube man, there's not really too much here worth noting outside of the presence of one CD. At Dog Nation level 7, famously inconspicuous number, that number 7, the CD appears with the Czech dialogue. Looks like the dog bought a CD for the boombox, but it's a game CD, so it won't work. We'll come back to this later. The next piece to come out was the Switch release, dropping on September 18th, 2018, a little over a month before the release of Deltarune. This one came with quite a few changes. The most obvious, of course, were the presences of Mad Mew Mew and a certain Clam Girl. While this release didn't introduce too much in terms of insights on the history of the world, it did create tangible connections to Deltarune itself. Clam Girl specifically seems to make reference to the real date of the port and of Deltarune, noting that, although the name was wrong, as we all know, it's Susie spelled S-U-S-I-E. Our next release of concern is the Undertale Alarm Clock Winter Dialogue. Put out for the 5th anniversary, September 15th, 2020, this dialogue was described by Toby as originally intended to debut in the Undertale Alarm Clock, an app that would have served as the vehicle for various humorous monologues from the characters. The app was a real thing before the developers were asked to help with Deltarune, and I highly suggest you look at it all if you haven't seen it already. It's at undertale.com/alarmclock. A lot of this dialogue is incredibly interesting on its own and serves as really solid extensions on already present character building. There is some nice insight on all the characters present, and it serves as really wonderful extra content without having too heavy a bearing on canon. It does, however, have something particularly interesting for us. Famously homosexual lines of dialogue are present here in many forms, but Asgore has a lot to say about an old friend of his, someone who he calls My Rudolph. Along with some other dialogue that'll be coming up shortly, this is, to my knowledge, the first ever overt mention of the Holiday family in the context of Undertale's narrative. There's also some interesting mentions of tears turning into beautiful ice crystals. With the holidays not yet being as relevant prior to the release of Chapter 2, and to be fair, conversations with Noelle and Rudy, plus Carol's note to Asgore, are clearly still important and in hindsight should have been massive red flags for the importance of these characters. These are some really interesting connections to receive through by what all means was simply extra content. Oh, and Sans also says, wash his hands, huh? We would see another interesting release with the drop of Undertale on Xbox on March 16th, 2021. The Dog Shrine is replaced by the Dog Casino, before being bulldozed off the screen to make way... bulldozed off the screen? You can interact with the battered and abandoned pieces of the Dog Shrine, including that CD from earlier, which now says, "It's a broken CD. you saw yourself reflected in the shattered pieces of the game. While it's not anything too huge for the world's history, the contents of the casino are intriguing. Some of the donation rewards include a game console, the Serpent Helm, which is literally just Jockington's hat, and the Freedom Emblem. The first of these donation rewards is a tall poker table that can't be played on due to its height. If the protagonist has no kills and has not completed Sans' MTT resort date or entered the core, Sans appears behind the table. If Metaton EX has been defeated and Undyne was spared, Mad Mew Mew appears instead. Either of them will comment on the last thing that the player had interacted with. In reference to the game console, or gamer box, Mew Mew says, "That white box? I'm pretty sure my body interfaces with it somehow." Which I'm sure means nothing at all. After all the rewards are earned, the player's donations become particles in the shrine room. Mad Mew Mew has dialogue for this as well. From 250 to 499 particles, she says, from 500 to 999 particles, she says, for 1,000 and onwards, she says. This one is interesting for a number of reasons. With the relevance of the Song from the Sea and the plot of Deltarune, the special gift red text sticks out like a sore thumb, and Mew Mew's musings about the big changes approaching with this new body all feel applicable elsewhere, most specifically considering the Gamerbox dialogue to Chris, or maybe to Des, but that's an entirely different conversation. With that, let's move on to Sans, who has some pretty interesting stuff for us. The specific point of interest here is when you get the particles for him. The first two tiers don't seem to be too important. Sans shares a bit of love for Snow and for Papyrus, but tier 3 is fascinating. For tier 3, Sans says, "Whoa, it's looking like a blizzard in here. I've only seen snow as bad as this once. You could barely see your bones in front of your face. But even so, the king was out there in red and white, putting down the presents for everyone. Papyrus, the yellow kid, the antlered girl and her big sis, he even had a little something for me, even though he didn't really know me. You're gonna have to meet him, huh? Bet that's a lot of pressure. So, I guess if it makes anything easier, don't think of him as the king. Think of him as the guy who gave me some socks." Again, the world seemed to be crashing together more and more. For a while, that was it for Undertale. Time passed, slowly for UTDR brain rot victims especially. 2021 gave us Deltarune Chapter 2, and 2024 gave us Chapters 3 and 4. There was some more in between, and strangely, it seemed like with Weird Route, we'd maybe received a bit of elaboration on that Sans Casino dialogue. But until particular events in chapters 3 and 4 seemed like the talk of connection between the worlds seemed to die down. That was until the Undertale 10th anniversary stream.
Thank you for using the door. Inspired by random slot and roll around.
The 10th anniversary was nuts for a lot of reasons, but for anyone who had already thought that these worlds were connected, it was truly something to witness. Starting with the extended section of the ruins, things are already loaded. The song here quotes Faint Courage, with the instrumentation reflecting a sort of hollowness. The area seems decrepit and abandoned, sporting a Deltarune with one, maybe two, of the triangles broken. Interestingly, the worst point of damage here is where the cyan triangle is in Chris's room in Castletown. In this area, tucked away in a house with a basement we never go into, we find the toy knife. In Snowden, we see a young girl who clearly looks like Noelle hiding behind the tree. At the start of Waterfall, we then see Spamton invade the stream while no one's looking, and he uses the loaded disc to manipulate the game, replacing Santa's Girlby trip with a Spamton a divorce moment, where we're inexplicably informed that Spamton can fit large things in his mouth. The imagery here and the use of the loaded disc is important for a number of reasons in canon, particularly its relation to the Neo body and the Shadow Crystal alongside it. But it really stands out when we consider a potential inspiration that we'll be talking about later. Oh, and in Hotland, in addition to a litany of new houses that occupy the background, we also see the inclusion of the new Hotland High. Here, we see a couple particularly interesting things. This guy, they're just kind of hanging out, and the teacher is uninteresting. And Mitako also decides to meet us after coming out from behind a burning tree. This one is too much. I actually don't even know what to say about this one. It's some king of trick. Again, our knowledge of the history of Undertale was seemingly expanded, but all in the same, there was another round of questions. Pandora's box had once again been opened, and for some who had succumbed to the deepest lengths of UTDR brain rot, small patterns were becoming more visible. It was becoming more apparent that, regardless of the full extent of this connection, that there was a link between the two games that was proving to be incredibly interesting. We've looked at Undertale about as much as we can at this point, though. We'll be back, but first, we'll need to take a look at the other half of this puzzle. We can't proceed here quite yet. From its release, Deltarune was very visibly connected to Undertale. Using the Undertale Twitter to communicate with the fanbase, someone seemed to have a treat for us. Some kind of a survey program? We're greeted with what almost looks like it could be a virus. Is this a virus? Is this a virus? But then we watch what seems to be the soul spawning in, followed by a character creator of some sort. Once this is all over, our creation is discarded, and we find ourselves greeted with a familiar face. Toriel tells us that we're late to class, and we see our protagonist exit bed. Chris, but they look like... We get driven through the town to school, being told that Asriel is off at college. Brady, Undyne, Politics Bear, and QC can all be spotted. Once at school, we head over to class with Miss Alphys and some classmates we might already think we know too. We're told to pick a partner for the upcoming school project. Why not? We were seeing some characters we know, and to the fresh eye, for many it seemed like maybe this could be post-pacifist. We do end up in the real world, but it looked nothing like this. Whatever. Who could we work with? All the kids I know are busy, plus who are these new kids? This smug bird infuriates me, and apparently this isn't Caddy with a Y, it's Caddy with an I? This dear Noelle seems to be pretty cool. Wait, not yet? Huh. But as we try to finally lock in a partner, the door slams open. Another new face, and clearly a force, we are introduced to Susie. If you don't know what happens from here, please play these games and come back. I promise it's worth your time, especially if you already played Undertale and felt like maybe you wanted to experience something else. Even just watching these games can be a treat. A lot of people have some really awesome runs, but nothing quite matches the feeling of finding unique flavor text that few people may ever see. Almost like a joke curated specifically for you. Nothing will ever feel quite like playing a game for yourself, whether it's hearing about it or watching it. I think playing hands-on is the best way. I'll assume, if you're here at this point, that you're caught up on Deltarune. So my recap kind of ends now. Let's get into the meat of things. Yeah? Remember all that talk about worlds? It doesn't take very long to get to a spot where these ideas become present again in Deltarune. Chapter 1 is short. Personally, I played it on release and put it down because of life, and then upon returning, I beat it in a single run on my first setting. I think a lot of others probably experienced beating Chapter 1 in a single run because it hit most people as a surprise how jarring the pre-completion Chapter 1 file select seems to be. The manner of speech in all caps have led people to believe this is Gaster, and, well...
It's me!
It's me. I'm people, but if you're here, you're probably also people, but that's not the point for right now, okay? Don't worry, not everything is about Gaster. It will be, but right now it's not. But it will be, though. Maybe not even in this video, but it's inevitable. He is already here. What I find particularly interesting here for our current purposes is the way in which the navigation of files is addressed here. As we move throughout the menu, playing around, These files seems to be talked about as if they carried life from the perspective of our host, or whoever it is that's speaking to us. It will be subsumed, it conformed to the reflection, and most notably, then it was spared, then it will be destroyed. Oh, shit, there's that. Oh. Huh. And the verbiage here treats these files, these instances of reality, as living. Our actions are being responded to in kind, leading to feelings of more familiarity with some concepts that we had already engaged with in Undertale. These files can't quite be our pets, though, as they're full of independent and complex creatures, characters with their own lives, as far as we can see. They'd have to be something else, a system of created things, a world. I don't have to tell you guys twice that the concept of worlds is comfortably explored in Deltarune's canon from the jump. The plot takes place across two worlds. Light and dark exist, but we're given hints to two more places, heaven and the depths. Staying within the most easily observable canon for a moment, though, the roaring itself is described to us as an apocalypse for both worlds. During Chapter 2, after Birdley almost ruins everything, Ralsei says of the roaring, "When the light is subsumed by shadow, when the fountains fill the sky, all will fall into chaos." We can see here the clear, more gamified presence of worlds, as we see that the plot threatens the world. Again, like Undertale in some ways, we're beginning to see the use of game imagery to paint a picture of our impact on the world, but it's becoming fractal in a way. We are creating and influencing these files just as the night and the lighteners are dark worlds, with those worlds also being affected by their inhabitants, as we can see from some dialogue in the game, specifically this dialogue from Shudda about the Purple Cliffs that a lot of people have seen, but for those who haven't, working up as well, this too was created by someone and iterated upon. Even Twitter has become affected by the game, creating an occasional window to connect with our peculiar host for just a moment. Chapter 4 gives us a slew of interesting scenarios, but of note here is the progression of the sanctuaries. As you know, in Chapter 4 we experience 3 separate dark worlds. I'll refer to them all by their OST names in an effort to keep things simple, but also it seems to be the most generally accepted set of names for all 3. In the Dark Sanctuary, we're given the simplest of the sanctuaries. We get Gwei, Balthazard, Mizzle, and Bibliox. Frankensteined is our main boss, and Gerson is our secret boss. We get more characterization of Gerson here than in the next 2 worlds. We exit the fountain after closing it, and watch as Susie opens the next fountain directly in front of us, leaving no room for mystery. Second Sanctuary is, in a lot of ways, really nutty. The first clear changes are color and sound. Everything looks different, almost as if to reflect directly the idea that this is Susie's iteration of a dark world, and the irregular time signature seems to represent a pattern changing while retaining its core components. We also see a different set of enemies and many inverted concepts. Some of the organics seem to have swapped positions and are now aggressive. You fight them, Wickabells, and Wingblades here, changing our enemy lineup. We also see a strange dark husk in the form of the armor of the Hammer of Justice. This is often referred to as the Sound of Justice. The OST name is Ripple, so I had originally written Ripple in the script, but we'll say Sound of Justice, I think. It's Gerson. It's Gerson, but it's not Gerson, but it's Gerson. But it's not Gerson. The Sound of Justice fight reveals to us through Ralsei's dialogue after that it took, quote, a specific darkness to give Gerson the form that he had in the Dark Sanctuary. We exit again with what we need and move on, but also with the knowledge that these 2 instances of a dark world made in the same space were different. future iteration changed the base material. The set of panels we're getting from the prophecy also seems to be changing with time. This I don't think I can make sense of quite yet, but we'll be returning to the prophecy panels to talk about a couple things later on in the discussion. The third sanctuary brings us back to the original visuals, but clearly things have changed once again. We're in a different area of the church, and it shows. The song is changing time signatures and playing with the idea of time and progression, almost as if to reinforce the previous ideas about iteration. All previous enemies appear in various groupings. At the end, of course, we're met with the Titan by way of the Knight's Hand. We do also, however, see Gerson again. This is interesting to me because while the Hammer of Justice armor / appearance is missable in the Dark Sanctuary, as in you can totally miss the secret boss fight and not encounter this, I would know. It happened to me on my first run, unfortunately. You will always see the Hammer of Justice armor in the third sanctuary. Also interesting to me is that the egg room exists in both the second and third sanctuaries, but the way in changes. Everything collapses into its conclusion after the Titan is defeated and the fountain sealed. We have now, within the canon of Deltarune by itself, witnessed a clear example of the concept of evolving iterations, as well as the idea that the creator of a world has an influence on it. While this is interesting in its own right, the impact it has on the greater canon is one that I feel is being slightly overlooked by those who don't yet know its potential inspirations.
Your dungeon master has placed you in a dreadfully precarious position. You're playing the most phenomenal game ever created. Your skin grows cold from your first glimpse of the enormous beast. It's a product of your imagination. Survival depends on a quick, decisive move. Your choices are limited. Stand and fight, or run. Use your lightning bolt.
Inspiration is a huge part of UTDR, and very notably of art in general. Many aspects of the Dreamers are heavily inspired by Cave Story's Mimiga. Moon Remix RPG inspired Undertale as well, and Live Alive is the reason that Megalovania exists in the first place. Even now, with Deltarune, we're seeing clear references to Link's Awakening, Little King's Story, and more. Never shy about speaking on influences, Toby Fox has not at all hidden the impact that a certain comic had on him. But as time went on, he's been more open with all of his fans about it, and its author's impact on his life.
All P-square glasses are inspired by John Egbert. No one needed to know that.
But now they do.
Who's John Egbert?
Reed, it's a
Shout-outs to
Homestuck
the
thing.
best comic.
You wouldn't understand.
Oh.
This is her special super duper Homestuck typing quirk. Between her yellow eyes, her face fins, her overworld mouth shape, and her red Briska shoes, she has a lot of elements from the trolls of Homestuck. LOL. I guess a muscular horse that attacks you with sweat is pretty Homestuck. This song was originally made for Homestuck, but it didn't get used, so it becomes my song. Jade Harley has Manti 4. At around 120 there is a reference to the song Doctor from Homestuck in the piano.
A space where he connected with many other young and inspired artists, another particularly self-aware narrative, and one of the most influential, for better or for worse, stories to hit the internet. I'm talking, of course, about Homestuck. To explain why, though, I'll have to give you a brief summary of an 8,000 plus page story. Homestuck is a lot to explain, but The basis of it is that 4 kids on Earth trigger the end of the world by playing a new computer game called Spurb. This game allows each of the 4 kids to connect to one another, with everyone serving as both a client and a server user. Everyone connects to each other, and through this, the 4 kids, named John, Dave, Rose, and Jade, are able to influence the actual physical world, utilizing Spurb as an interface to build. Earth is destroyed, and the players' homes are transported into the Incipisphere, a game space made up of several pieces. At the center is Skya, a planet that gets populated as a result of the game beginning, then gradually becoming more complex as a result of game progression. Attached to Skya are 2 moons, Prospit, the light moon, and Durse, the dark moon. In Homestuck, all of the characters dream on these 2 moons, and each session's players, we'll come back to sessions in a bit, are evenly divided across the 2 moons. Past these are the lands, planets that are personalized for each player. These planets contain elements required to progress each player's individual quest. Beyond the planets, surrounding everything, is the furthest ring. This is a space that is chaos beyond comprehension, inhabited by creatures known as the Horror Terrors, with small instances known as dream bubbles containing the souls of the dead. The furthest ring connects different sessions across time and space. Among the lands in every session is a planet for breeding frogs with the intention of creating a Genesis frog, a living creature that houses the universe itself. The Genesis frog can be considered the outermost point, containing the Incipisphere itself. The goal of the game? Ultimately, it's for the players to succeed in completing their session by birthing a new Genesis frog, through which they create a new universe molded by their own desires. How this comes about, or what happens in the event of failure, is the meat of the plot. We're informed over the course of the Earth Kids session that timelines are relevant as well, with Dave being a player who gets tasked with navigating decision-making to assure that their timeline does not become doomed. The main timeline of the plot becomes known as the Alpha Timeline, but the events of Doom timelines still ripple out and affect the others. All timelines impact each other. The original story is presented as a webcomic, and this informs a lot of its visual identity. During the comic are flash animations, usually there for important events. Homestuck was made with Photoshop and utilizes a lot of other source material. Posters, pictures, movie clips, etc., all subject to use and reference. By using chat logs to build full and character-driven conversation between the individual members of the plot, Homestuck managed to become a bit of a time capsule in many ways. If you grew up on the internet around or before Homestuck, you end up seeing a lot of yourself and others you may have met online through it. It's dated in this way, which at many points can be visible through its humor and its language, but it creates a whole unique feeling that can't really be replicated by other pieces of work. Of course, it would be hard to develop an 8,000-page story just utilizing the plot I presented to you, so as one can imagine, there's far more to it. Homestuck's story structure makes great use of pattern-based storytelling in such a way that becomes almost fractal, with each iteration of the pattern affecting all of those before it and after it, creating an infinite wave of patterns. Boasting 7 acts total with subsections in these acts, the story is divided in such a way that it's easy for us to pinpoint the origins of these patterns. In turn, this allows us to clearly note the iterations and draw connections. Throughout the story, from incredibly early on, our 4 heroes are constantly pestered by a group of internet trolls. While at first this seems to be less literal, it turns out these trolls were actually an alien race known as trolls, hailing from a distant planet named Alternia from a time far before our heroes. Time itself is a mess in Homestuck, but this connection is made clear to us at a later point in the story. In Act 5, we switch perspectives and are introduced to the trolls for real. We meet the 12 Alternian children: Karkat, Gamzee, Terezi, Solix, Tavros, Aradia, Nepeta, Vriska, Equius, Kanaya, Eridin, and Fefri. They begin a game called Scrub, which for all intents and purposes is just the Alternian version of Spurb. We're now witnessing another session. We witness patterns repeat across the cast of trolls that we'd seen in the humans. As we read, We learn that the troll session was the origin point of the Earth session, with the trolls succeeding in birthing a Genesis frog that becomes what we know as the universe we'd experience through the eyes of the Earth kids. They spend the rest of their lives flying on a meteor through the furthest ring while watching the session that they'd created. This, however, comes with unfortunate consequences. The Genesis frog created by the trolls had cancer, creating an unwinnable session for the Earth kids. This situation drives both parties, now in frequent communication during the second half of Act 5, to look for a solution. They are contacted by a man known as Doc Scratch, a malevolent entity working on behalf of his master, Lord English. He informs them of a way to fix this and win the game. On Dave's planet, the land of heat and clockwork, or Lohak, is a location known as the Beat Mesa. It's a giant disc. This is a construct born in all sessions as a panic button, used to reset the universe itself by causing something known as the Scratch. The Scratch is basically why we're here talking about Homestuck and UTDR. There are other reasons, but this is the core of it. The Scratch, as described earlier, allows the session to be reset with new starting conditions. Both groups, human and trolls, were descendants of others. The human ancestors were John's grandmother, Dave's brother, Rose's mother, and Jade's grandfather. The troll ancestors were a group of 12 figures in Alternian history, with each mirroring aspects of their descendants. When initiated, the Scratch would inverse the roles of the ancestors and the current session. During both sessions, we see that almost all of our characters are created using ectobiology. This is hard to explain, but it essentially involves a player cloning all ancestors and descendants, which at a later point in the session are all sent out to their corresponding space and time during the final act of the session, known as the Roaring. The Reckoning, when Sky itself is destroyed. Post-Scratch, the times of the ancestors and descendants are flipped, creating an alternate universe. During Act 5, in the Flash Cascade, we watch as the Scratch is initiated. To save all players from the troll and human sessions, plans are enacted for all parties to move together to the new universe. How do they move forward? Well, in this series, there's something known as the fourth wall. In the most literal sense, this is a window into the universe of the story. We see many of them across the series, but the most notable of these is in the room of the author, Andrew Hussey, who is an actual character in the universe. We'll come back to Hussey later, but all you need to know for now is that there are two fourth walls present in a space known as the Yellow Yard. One is a window into pre-Scratch, and one is a window into post-Scratch. Jade, who develops the power to control space, is able to gather all necessary parties and fly them on a ship through the pre-Scratch fourth wall. Traversing the space between the walls takes years, but the Scratch is successfully executed, and the universe is reset. Act 6 starts as a direct parallel to Act 1. We're introduced to our human cast, Jane, Dirk, Roxy, and Jake. We see that it's autumn, something I also find notable because of the setting of Deltarune. Many elements are the same, but the realities have bled together. A troll ancestor from pre-Scratch becomes an empress that overtakes the Earth. We see a line of contact established between Jake, the post-Scratch version of Jade's grandfather, and Jade herself. We saw this established in Act 5, and we watch how it happens now from the other side. The existence of both realities also leads to the creation of our true final villain. A new race, the Cherub, are introduced, and we meet Calliope and Caliborn, two opposing forces existing within a single entity. Caliborn turns out to be Lord English, and we learn how his existence comes about and what it leads to. The idea of two separate sides of a story influencing each other in an infinitely repeating cycle is addressed earlier in Act 5. During the troll session, the 12 kids split into two separate teams, but each player has to connect to each other for a session to progress. The members of each team connect to their team members in a straight path, leaving the sixth member of each team to connect to the first member of the opposite team. This creates what's called the Mobius double reach around, a Mobius strip-shaped connection between the two sessions, creating a single stable loop. This is a microcosm of the human and troll sessions, which in turn is a microcosm of the entire story. Ultimately, Homestuck is a creation story that iterates upon itself. Using time and space as aspects combined with the concepts of narratives and canon, it creates a self-sustaining set of worlds that interact with and influence one another. These worlds are influenced by the real world as well. As explained earlier, Hussey is an actual character in this story. Initially, they're our narrator, but control of the narrative is also a concept that gets played with. Doc Scratch takes control of the narrative when introduced and during his appearances, and Caliborn fights with Hussey for control of the narrative, eventually narrating entire sections on his own and creating a retelling of Homestuck itself in-universe called Homosuck. Caliborn's theme song, The Lordling, actually uses the same exact sample as Flowey's laugh. Also fun to note is that Caliborn ultimately has his soul integrated with a doll who becomes an aspect of Doc Scratch, who then becomes Lord English. When Lord English appears in the story, and at several points prior while addressing him, it is said that he is already here. I think I've done the best I can to describe the aspects of Homestuck necessary for this discussion. I highly suggest that you read it if you're interested in understanding any further. There are so many connections between Homestuck and UTDR that it would be borderline impossible to discuss them all here. There's a great YouTube channel out there called Homestuck Crazy News that analyzes a lot of the connections between the series. If you're more interested, I highly suggest checking that guy out, but I'd maybe read Homestuck first. It's a little bit hard to make sense of everything if you don't understand the source material. I'm sure you can understand now why I would bring attention to this. A major source of inspiration for Toby Fox is a self-aware story that deals with the concept of narratives in a self-aware manner. I personally started reading Homestuck before chapters 3 and 4 had come out, so you can imagine my surprise when I saw half of the material present. The idea of Tenna recreating the game, the Mantle game, Gerson directly addressing the concepts we're concerned with, and more. On top of these connections, the set pieces of Deltarune also seem to be an inverted version of Undertale's set pieces. Card Castle and New Home are both plain colored, with New Home being monochromatic gray and Card Castle being black with white outlines, both being where we fight a king. Cyber City and Core are both incredibly blue and futuristic, with both containing a neophyte and a song that doesn't change in the final area, where you also fight stronger versions of earlier enemies. TV World and Hotland are also both very warm colors, with our main source of engagement being a game show host. The Sanctuaries and Waterfall are both very blue, containing portions of the prophecy or the history, with the Hammer and the Spear of Justice serving as opposites of one another. Both also use a funny race with the same song. This is less important. Peak, but less important. Let's return to some of the points I made before talking about Homestuck. A lot of the pieces of foreshadowing become much more clear and much more harrowing. The worlds of Deltarune and Undertale began to bleed together the closer we got to the release of Deltarune. Now, as we get more of the story, things continue to get stranger and stranger. There is one particularly interesting piece of additional material for Deltarune that I neglected to talk about earlier: the Spamton Sweepstakes. These were interesting for a number of reasons, but among them are the idea that there are infinite Spamtons, and one very particular blog entry, the newest Girl blog post, which seems to be an account from Noelle describing an interaction between Chris and Susie that we haven't seen before. This incredible Reddit post by Starlight Shadows brought to my attention long ago that this blog post is full of incredibly strange inconsistencies. As per usual, I suggest reading the material itself, but the points that Starlight brings up are as follows. Alphys just randomly disappears. Chris falls asleep in a way that's addressed in Deltarune as an uncommon occurrence. Noelle knows about the chalk that Susie eats. Susie's confrontation with Chris is almost a repeat of Chapter 1, and Noelle confirms that she's never seen Susie do this when we see this come up in Chapter 2. These inconsistencies now stack with the inconsistencies we're receiving about Undertale's history, strangely enough, while also concerning the holidays. Starlight compares it to shadow crystals, noting how similar this post is to the realities visible while viewing the crystals. The initiation of the Scratch also brings about the Big Bad, a contract of sorts. When we think about this, and then the effects of doing genocide on one save file, we can almost look at any post-genocide run in a similar capacity without being as dramatic. I said we'd come back to the loaded disk imagery. The loaded disk is more than likely a floppy disk. The imagery of floppy disks has been associated with saving files for a very, very long time, and there's literally one in Chapter 2. Present across all computer programs as well as games themselves. So, it could be implied here that Spamton is literally manipulating the save, or the world, iterating upon it. The loaded disk isn't a CD though, and Beat Mesa is. So, isn't this a stretch? Let's look back at the Dog Shrine one more time. It's a game CD that the dog bought. This is incredibly interesting if we take the dog room into account for a moment. In it, we see rope, we'll come back to this later, a dog-shaped husk of dog residue, a text-to-speech programming thing, book, I don't know, pieces of a puzzle. You're very funny, Mr. Fox. And a computer. The annoying dog program a game? This whole room reminds me a lot of Hussey's room. The same dog is the one who got the CD, the one that shattered when we got close to Deltarune's release, and the one that remained shattered after. This imagery of shattering should remind you of one Wingaster. Seeing the reflection of yourself in shattered pieces, I find myself thinking about our narrator, Gaster, using Deltarune to connect to us, albeit through shattered pieces, many copies. With this imagery in mind, let's talk about one of the prophecy panels. I have yet to see anyone successfully make sense of Gallery. This panel depicts a figure with a head split in half looking at two separate paintings within what seems to be like stage curtains. Remember Homestuck's fourth wall? It too is depicted with stage curtains. I believe that the figure here is Gaster, and that the two paintings are potentially screens, with both Undertale and Deltarune playing out on those screens. We're told in many capacities that Gaster is listening to us, or at the very least, present. One of the strangest examples of this is this Tumblr post by the Undertale blog, which potentially extends Gaster's reach beyond just the game, and a way beyond what we get from Twitter. It's been long argued that Gaster shattering across time and space made him omnipresent, but this all gains new meaning when we consider that he may be observing the realities as we go through them. It would imply that he has observed all of it, which makes the presence of our omniscient glowing narrator in Deltarune much more interesting. These connections do leave room for error though. The biggest questions are as follows. Where do our missing characters go? There are many residents of Hometown that don't seem to make it, and the Darkners seem to be gone entirely. Chris, Susie, Noelle, Birdley, Caddy, and the other Kattenheimers, Alvin, Rudy, Carol, and more are all missing. This, I believe, can be answered through an extension on this topic, but that's a topic of its own that I'll be making another video about later. Why doesn't anybody seem to talk about or remember the surface aside from Sans, Azrael, and Kara? This, I think, can be explained through exploring an idea from another story momentarily. Are the current events of Deltarune a specific ending from Undertale, or simply a result of the fact that it happened at all? we still haven't answered the chicken and the egg question. We still don't know which comes first. This, I think, has to do more with Gaster's incident than the events of any plot. Finally, we must ask, what is the origin of the soul? It seems to be present already during the beginning of Undertale, with there being no fanfare concerning its presence beyond Flowey talking about it. In Deltarune, though, it looks almost like the soul is created during the opening of Chapter 1. Put most simply, I think that first, Deltarune happens without the soul or the player present, which leads to the creation of the Underground, which in turn leads to the demise of Gaster. These events can never be changed, as they predate our influence. However, after his demise, while in the ether, or the depths, or whatever one might call it, Gaster plays a part in the creation of the soul. After viewing its influence over the timelines of Undertale, he attempts to utilize the same influence on the world from before his own, finally completing his final round of research after many failures, thus yielding Deltarune. From here, I think one of our potential endings will lead back to the creation of the Underground once again, establishing a perfect loop, a Mobius double reach around. Which ending? Let's just say these questions are more intertwined than one might think. So Deltarune, like Homestuck, is doomed in a way. This is a common trope, the Doom world. Analyzing it in this context, though, with previous entries from previous worlds having impacts on the ramifications of the plot, another of Toby's major influences is brought to mind. Let's take a second to talk about Mother 3.
The funny is that me and all the dads are all friends because of sdarman.net, an Earthbound fan website. Bonding over an RPG game online brought us together.
That's true, we go way back.
So if there's anything I've ever been more proud that Undertale ripped off from Earth, it was having people bond and become friends over a silly RPG game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, in a lot of ways, incredibly difficult to overstate the impact that Mother had as a series on Toby Fox as a gamer and as a creative. Some of Toby Fox's first projects released to the public were Earthbound ROM hacks, Orange Winter Quests, and Halloween Hack. A lot of his time spent engaging with gaming early through what he said was on starmen.net, a Mother forum that's been around since 1999. There's a really good video out there showcasing his ROM hacks, as well as a lot of other fan art that he made for the Mother series that he posted on Starman. It also talks about some of his work on Homestuck. Fangamer, the site that produces the official UTDR merchandise, was born from Starman. That's more interesting than important, but it goes to show how deeply connected UTDR is to Mother. Inevitably, I'm going to miss a lot. But just to really hammer my point in here, allow me to list off some of the clearest references or influences of Mother on UTDR. Our protagonist is a silent kid with a striped shirt. Papyrus' outfit has the logo of the Starman, the most iconic of Mother's villain/monster designs, on the same exact spot on his chest that the Starmen do. Temi Village is a quaint, small area with its own shop and its own funny tribe of quirky creatures, kind of like Saturn Village. During the final battle of Earthbound, the only way you can win, ultimately, is by praying, just like how in Undertale, you need all of your friends to defeat Asriel. The walk through the Underground at the end of True Pacifist mirrors the walk through Eagleland during the end of Earthbound, but nobody came. The dialogue that pops up when you get an encounter after you've cleared an area in Genocide is also used for enemies in Earthbound when they call for help and fail. Cave of the Past, the final area of Earthbound, shares a sample with Amalgam, Deirdre by the Beach Boys. This noise. That's just Undertale. Now with Deltarune chapters 3 and 4, we also see two clear references to Mother 1. The first of these, the Forgotten Man, has come up in conversation lately concerning Deltarune.
Compared to Earthbound, I think the best example is the Forgotten Man of Magi Can't. In the Japanese version, he's a slightly tough guy who just considers being forgotten his hobby, and by paying attention to him, you're getting in his way. In the English version, due to the phrasing and some slight mistranslations, he instead sounds like a meek and pathetic man who
Forgotten Man is an NPC in Magicant who you need to interact with correctly to get past. The conversation with him looks like this. If you haven't seen this yet, but you have seen Chapter 3's Egg Room, I'm sure some flags just went off for you. As you may know, to get the egg in Chapter 3, after going through some setup, you can leave a battle versus a Ribic to end up in Man Country. Here, we have to talk to the man behind the tree again, who speaks with us this time. This one is insane, but strangely enough, there's a bit more than just that. In Chapter 4, we're introduced to the concept of the tale from hell. Given this prophecy and this organic dialogue, which when unscrambled says, "Lost where the forest would grow, the children followed the pointed tail," the poor children. To get to Magicant in Mother 1, the protagonist, Ninten, has to go to his great-grandfather's house where he finds a diary. We need this diary later to get into Magicant. After approaching a pink rock in an empty cave, Ninten must use telepathy on it with the diary to get to Magicant. When telepathy is used on the rock, it says, "Who has lost his tail?" With the diary in your possession, the follow-up is, "The forgotten one of the ship that sails the cosmos." This riddle is referencing Gygus, the final boss of both Mother 1 and Earthbound. While the connection here might not be as clear yet, I have my eye on it as we proceed throughout the story. These, of course, are just references, and at points, as you can see, are a bit speculative. We have a lot more to go off of, though. As mentioned before, Toby is not shy about his influences, and he's talked a lot about Mother and its creator, Shigesato Itoi's impact on him and his work. There are a few interviews out there that are worth watching for yourself to get the full scope, but even small quotes or snippets are telling. Toby said in 2013, before the demo for Undertale even came out, "Undertale, it's Mother 3 with furries." In an interview from a documentary when asked about Mother 3 in reference to it being localized someday, Toby said,
If it comes to the West, you can play it and realize how unoriginal I am.
While unfair to himself in my opinion, even the essence of this inspiration can be felt in how Deltarune seems to be approaching the themes of inspiration, influence, and iteration. On a lighter note, on Mother 3's 15th anniversary, Toby said, "Mother 3 was a really influential game to me. If I hadn't played it, I never would have created the Toriel battle, or, well, any of the other boss battles in the game. It also probably influenced how I try to reuse motifs in my songs now that I think about it." A lot of people know, regardless of if they played any of the games, that Mother has had an impact on UTDR, but I hope this helps illuminate how deep and reverberant that impact truly is. With this in mind, let's talk about the plot of Mother 3. Incredibly heavy spoiler warning going forward. I heavily suggest that you play or watch this game, both even. It is one of the most important games ever created, and given the moment in time that we are living through, its themes continue to resonate more and more. I'll be keeping things about as piecemeal as I can, but in order to speak on everything I see, I'd like to paint the full picture. There's a lot to touch on, so please stick with me. I promise it'll make sense by the end. From here, a decent amount of this is basically going to be a Mother 3 plot reading as written out by myself. If you would like to skip that, I will be leaving the timestamp for you right here and also in the description below. thank you. There will also, of course, be a chapter there. After naming your characters and favorite things, you're welcomed into the world of Mother 3. We're shown an isolated island known as the Nowhere Islands. Here, in a place called Tasmilly Village, there's a small family of 4 and a dog. A mother, Hinawa, and her 2 sons, Klaus and Lucas, are visiting the mountain home of her father, Alec. Her husband, Flint, waits at home for his family to return. Strange things are beginning to happen around the area around them, and we learn that the animals of the forest are becoming violent. An invading army, the Pigmas, bomb the nearby forest. A fire breaks out, and chaos ensues. We see a very large man named Leader ringing a bell. He doesn't speak. This will matter later. Flint and the dog, Boney, run around helping out, looking for their family before being called over to 2 scared and shaking children, before ultimately learning of a great tragedy. On their way back, Hinawa, Klaus, and Lucas were attacked by a Drago, a large dinosaur-like creature. We'd seen Klaus and Lucas playing with them earlier and were told that they're peaceful, so to hear this is jarring. While protecting the children, Hinawa was killed. Their lives are immediately altered completely. Flint, after a rampage, is knocked out and imprisoned. Klaus visits his cell and promises to get so strong that even Dragos won't stand a chance against him. Klaus walks off, leaving Flint with an apple containing a hand file to break out of the cell. Outside, a man named Duster promises to do anything he can to help. Hinawa's funeral is happening north of the village, where everyone offers their condolences. Alec is here and says no one's been able to find Klaus since he visited Flint. Lucas cracks and admits that Klaus took Flint's knife and went off to try to take revenge on the Drago that killed his mother. He says that he wanted to go as well, but Klaus said he was going to go on his own. Lucas is reprimanded by Alec for not stopping Klaus and runs off, distraught. Alec makes the call to arm and mobilize to keep Klaus safe, telling Flint to meet at his house. There, Alec says he thinks Klaus may have gone to a friend's house. They head over, and we meet the Magypsies, a race of non-binary protectors of the Nowhere Islands. There are 7 of them, but one of them, Locria, is missing. We learn that one of the Magypsies, Aeolia, taught Klaus a powerful PSI technique and sent him on his way to the Drago Plateau. Alec and Flint head over and are confronted by a Mecha Drago, a Drago that's been made into what looks like a cyborg. Flint, after defeating the creature, is driven by Alec to spare it after its child appears. They leave, and behind them on a lower cliff, we see Klaus's body. From here, the plot takes flight. In response to the invading Pigmas, Duster, a thief, is sent out by his father and teacher, Wes, to an abandoned castle north of the village, a Sohei castle. Here, he's meant to retrieve something called the Hummingbird Egg, or the Egg of Light. Duster takes on the mission and begins to explore Sohei Castle, eventually finding Rope's Egg! And also an important item. However, upon returning, learns that it's the wrong thing, and Wes needs to go there with him. On their way back, it would seem that someone went into the castle behind them. We see tank treads and signs of damage. During the second trip into the castle, we end up meeting someone else. Kumatora, the princess of this castle. As they explore more, we see a courtyard with something sticking out of the ground. The 2 new companions find the egg, but Duster gets caught in a trap with it and is whisked away. We see as this is happening that a merchant named Facade, who's working with the Pigmas, begins to introduce money and sell things called happy boxes, really they're televisions, to the residents of Tasmilly. A monkey named Salsa is being held captive by him, forced to do his bidding. After some time, Salsa is saved by Wes and Kumatora, but they all get cornered by Facade and the Pigmas, who attack with a tank. Lucas, accompanied by the Drago and its child, arrives to save the party. Everyone catches up, then separates, trying to protect the village from the threat that's arrived at their door. 3 years later, we return to Tazmily. It's been transformed and modernized by the fascists. They literally pigheil, dude. Listen, I'm not making it political. Itoy is making it political. Okay. Fuck off. Lucas looks around his changed hometown with Boney, and they learn that Duster is alive, working somewhere named Club Titty-Boo under a new name. The forest is now full of disturbing, mashed-together creatures, violently attacking those who venture through. On the way, Lucas meets Ionia, a Magypsy we'd met earlier. They teach Lucas PSI. Surprisingly, he learns PK Love, a very powerful technique that Ionia says is hardly ever learned outside of a select group of people. At the club, we meet Kumatora, posing under an alias. They then connect with Duster, who under the alias Lucky is living as a bassist with a popular band, DCMC. The band, being informed of Duster's real role, sends him off. We learn that Duster left the egg somewhere safe, with a clayman, a golem of sorts, in somewhere known as the Unknown Valley. The party heads off. While they manage to find the egg at the Unknown Valley, as they're heading over, Lucas is at one point confronted by a confused pig mask, who seems to be confused that their commander isn't in the proper uniform. He's given the correct one, but because of this, after securing the egg, the party is brought to Thunder Tower by another group of pig masks. Upon touching the egg, Duster's memories are restored. Lucas and co. run into Facade at the tower, who recognizes Lucas. The party sprints away, running up the tower, but finding themselves in a strange playroom owned by a certain King P, who's said to be the leader of the pig mass. Thunder Tower itself is a weapon, striking anyone who the pig mass deem as bothersome with a blast of lightning. Our protagonists make it to the generator of this tower and destroy it. Facade orders the tower be destroyed completely to take out our party. He attempts to fly off on the pig mass ship. Duster grabs onto the ship, and the others grab onto him, but they're shaken off of the ship as the pig mass commander, a masked man, watches from inside. Lucas and Boney wake up in a hay bale in Tazmily and are saved by Alec and Wes, who ask where Duster is. Alec suggests that Lucas seek out the Magypsies. Boy and Dog find Ionia, who brings them to Aeolia's house. They begin talking, but the ground trembles as they speak and the sky flashes. Aeolia begins to realize they are dying and says that their needle has been pulled. They leave a memento and open a secret passage which leads to Osohe Castle. Here, we return to the courtyard from earlier. The thing that was sitting in the ground, the needle, is now gone, with smoke plumes rising from where it once stood. Ionia explains that this is the first of 7 needles. We learn that the Nowhere Islands are home to a dragon, which sleeps in the darkness below them. The dragon, too powerful for human control, was put to sleep by the Magypsies' ancestors using the 7 needles, 1 per Magypsy. When a Magypsy's needle is pulled, they disappear, like we saw with Aeolia. A prophecy has been told, however, that someone will appear to wake the dragon when its power is needed. If this person's heart is evil, the dragon's power will obey that evil. If this person's heart is good, the evil will be washed away. Ionia tells Lucas that only those who have learned PK love can pull the needle. They mention that strangely, they don't feel anything, not good nor evil, coming from the needle. Ionia tells Lucas where the next needle is, then does this. Initiating the hunt for the 7 needles. Boney brings Lucas to Hinawa's grave, where the gravekeeper Nippolite is paying his respects. He gives Lucas the Courage Badge, a gift from Flint, recounting how Flint's life has ultimately been destroyed, becoming a cycle of mourning his dead wife and searching the mountains for Klaus. Along the way to our next needle, we end up at a chimera lab, a facility being used to create amalgamations of animals, chimeras. These are all of those unfortunate creatures that we've been fighting thus far in the forest. Here we find Dr. Andonuts, the scientist from Earthbound. In that game, he built something called a phase distorter that allows the heroes to travel through time and space. He explains that he's been forced to work as the pigmass scientist. We find Salsa here as well, who ultimately saves Lucas and Boney before accompanying them to the next needle. When they arrive, they meet Kumatora again, who is taken in by the Gypsy Doria after falling off of the mother ship. Doria's needle resides under a pond, which, when drained, Lucas is able to pull successfully.
Lavos?
Atop Snowcap Mountain, another needle is pulled, Lydia's. Lucas, Kumatora, and Boney are too late and watch as the masked man pulls the needle. Lucas and the masked man have a moment before the man leaves. Lydia pleads with Lucas to be the one who pulls the needles before disappearing. The crew heads back to Tazmily, noticing that the residents are leaving more and more, with people mentioning that they're moving to the big city to seek better lives. They move on to the next needle, eventually finding themselves at Saturn Valley. We find Mr. Saturn's duster and another needle, Phrygia's. We also find something else cool that I'll leave unsaid, as it's a great twist. Lucas pulls the needle, but before leaving, one of the Mr. Saturns takes his courage badge and offers to clean it. I'm omitting a lot of this part because it's got some of the funniest plot beats, and I do think it's worth seeing for yourself. Spoiling this plot feels bad, so I will take another moment to say that if anything here has caught your attention, please consider playing or watching the game for yourself. After ending up back in Tazmily again, we see things continuing to get emptier. The next needle is across the ocean on another island, so after a short swim, a really pleasant shroom trip, and an interesting fight with our protagonists find themselves at the 5th needle, Mixolydia's. Moments from pulling the needle, the pig masks arrive, red carpet in tow. A masked man walks down the carpet, once again locking eyes with Lucas before blasting our party with the electricity from his sword. Pulling the needle over their unconscious bodies, the man leaves once again. Mixolydia shows up before disappearing, musing over the unfortunate nature of the events that are unfolding. They too mention that they feel nothing coming from the needle and offer our protagonist a gift for the sixth of the gypsy, someone that we know well. Back at Tasmily, the town has grown more and more hollow. Even the soundtrack reflects this, with the song "And Then There Were None," a sad, remorseful, and even nostalgic song using an earlier motif, also from Tasmily. Saying their final goodbye, Lucas, Kumatora, Duster, and Boney head off to Ionia's home. Ionia gives the crew a means of getting to the next needle and sends them off to the Chupichupioi temple where it lies. Obviously that was how obvious. On the way, the Mr. Saturn that took Lucas's badge returns it, revealing it to be a Franklin badge, a badge that deflects lightning. At the temple, we see the pig mask trying to break in. Lucas and the masked man meet once more, and the man quickly strikes again with lightning, only to get reversaled by the Franklin badge. He then confronts the team, is defeated, and leaves. Lucas makes it to the needle, making our count 3-3. A limo arrives at the behest of King P, who we learn is Porky, Ness's neighbor, and one of the antagonists of Earthbound. He's invited our protagonist to the big city that we've heard of, New Pork City. They begrudgingly accept. Residents of Tasmily fill the streets of this large city, and here things are quite odd. There's a movie theater playing the events of Earthbound constantly. One thing leads to another, and Boney ends up chasing a bug into the sewer. Lucas and the others follow him, eventually finding him, and then Leader, the bell ringer. Here, we learn that Leader does speak. I told you it would matter, but was waiting for the right moment. He then tells us everything he knows about the Nowhere Islands. Leader explains to us that long ago, there was a world, something other than these islands. Far more people lived there, but humans destroyed this world as a result of greed. It was expected. Before the world's end, a white ship came to the Nowhere Islands with all the residents of Tasmily. They had managed to escape the world before it was destroyed. They would continue to go by their previous names, and a plan was set in place before the world was destroyed. As we know, the Nowhere Islands are special. Due to the giant dragon living underneath the islands, the new residents would survive even oblivion. Leader explains to us again that the dragon was put to sleep by the Magypsies. The people who had come to the Nowhere Islands feared that the ending could be brought again. Thinking about it, they felt their world was destroyed as a result of how they'd lived. In response, they decided to erase everyone's memories of the previous world and restart their lives with new rules and new roles. Yes, in short, everyone would play out the ideal story that they had come up with, says Leader. The people would restart their lives in Tasmily, a simple, peaceful village, the kind of place that they wished they'd grown up in. They erased their memories of everything, but it was necessary to record the fact that this memory replacement had happened. The hummingbird egg, or egg of light, was a device made to store the memories. Wes and Duster, given the roles of thieves, were set to take action if anything dangerous had occurred. Leader, the one person left with memories of the old world, wasn't given a role in the story. His ringing of the bell was meant to serve as a suggestion to keep people's memories from coming back. His role would be revealing the secrets of the world at the right time. Leader says, although Tazmily exists, in reality, it was originally created as part of a story. He then explains that Asohe Castle was already here when the white ship had arrived, seemingly being cleared out by people who had left in fear of the dragon. The story of the islands was created in haste, so the stories of Asohe Castle have very little past or history. Leader says, have you ever noticed that no one from Tazmily can talk about things from 100 or 1,000 years ago? In truth, we had wanted to create an entire plethora of myths and legends, but our story was made in such a rush that we weren't able to. It's a real shame. It's explained that people had fully taken to their new identities until Porky had arrived on the islands. Using a phase distorter that he'd stolen from Andonuts, he brought himself and many others, mostly those who'd become pigmass, to the islands. Turns out, he was locked out of all the other spaces and times aside from this one. Porky arrived here and made the islands his toy box. Eventually, learning about the white ship because of a traitor among the Magypsies. Lokria, the 7th Magypsy, would tell him everything, after which he mobilized to pull the needles so that he could use the dragon's power. Regardless, only a select few, those who know PK love, can pull the needle, so the arrival of the Masked Man changed everything. Leader warns us that if Porky and the Masked Man pull the 7th needle, the world will once again be destroyed. All things may come to an end, or new and bountiful things may begin. Wouldn't you like to see it happen? Leader offers Lucas some reassurance, complimenting his strength and reinforcing the weight of his mission. God won't make you bear more than you can carry, he says. Lucas is told that he isn't alone, and with this newfound information, the team barrels toward the climax. People are gathered in the city for a quote, something big, so Lucas and friends head to Empire Porky Building and begin moving up. Porky requests them on the 100th floor, and they make their way. Navigating the whims of a large child, the crew goes through the building, finding disturbing chimeras, people stored in incubator tanks, and more signs of Porky's grotesque and childish nature. Eventually, we make it to Porky. He sends mechs of himself to attack, who are defeated by Lucas and co., assisted by the members of DCMC. The residents of Tazmily, who Flint is with, gather to meet him, and the real Porky descends from the ceiling, a decrepit gray husk of himself. He announces that the 7th needle, the final needle, has been found underneath New Pork City, and drops off Lucas, Kumatora, Duster, Boney, and Flint into a cavern far underneath the earth. While navigating, Flint comes to a realization. He realizes that the Masked Man is Klaus, giving him some semblance of closure, but leaving him huddled on the floor, reeling. The crew goes ahead, finding Porky. Lucas and friends learn that he has no remorse, commenting that his adorable little monster is on its way to the final needle. According to him, Klaus is now a robot who knows nothing, containing no more life and obeying his every command. A fight inevitably ensues, and Porky eventually explains that his time travel resulted in his petrification, essentially making him immortal, even if you beat him. He's, well, defeated, and decides to shut himself away in an absolutely safe capsule, a capsule that can't be entered, nor escaped, ever again. Andonuts appears and explains that he warned Porky not to use the capsule, as if it was meant to protect the world from whatever is inside. Rendered useless, Porky is rolled around in the capsule by Andonuts as Lucas moves ahead to the precipice. The crew reaches Klaus and the seventh needle, and he immediately fires off lightning, knocking out everyone but Lucas. What follows is the single most heart-wrenching thing I have ever engaged with in a game. After a long bout, Klaus removes his mask. Almost apologetically, he uses lightning one more time. The Franklin badge deflects it, leaving him near death. With his final breaths, Klaus apologizes to Lucas, falling into his arms. Apologizing again, this time to Flint as well. Klaus passes. Flint asks Lucas to forgive his brother before asking him to pull the final needle. The game presents you with the illusion of choice, asking if you'll pull the final needle. Regardless of your choice, Lucas pulls the needle. It went unused, but originally if you said no, it would respond with, "No one can stop Lucas from pulling the needle. No one." We watch as the world ends. The word "end" with a question mark appears. But if you move in the dark void, some of the characters are actually here and seemingly have survived. We get some final moments with them before the credits roll, and we are met with the final screen. The logo of the game with all natural elements, and underneath it, the word "end" with no question mark. Definitive this time. That was a lot. So, if you're still here, I appreciate you sticking with me. I don't think any summary could ever do it justice. I really do think that Mother 3 is one of the most important games of all time. It serves as a beautiful warning of the dangers of fascism and how it starts as a creeping underbelly layered underneath or behind a simple facade. When push comes to shove, Mother 3 asks what strength is, and more often than not, the answer is perseverance. In a lot of ways, the answer is determination. That's something that resonates through the Mother series as a whole, with Itoi expressing the importance of prayer and connection heavily from the start. What really makes it strong is kindness, is love. I mean, the theme of Mother is the love theme. You know, there's, I mean, I'm going off script here for a second, but I mean, like, it's about love. It's about love and perseverance, man. It's good stuff. That's something that resonates throughout the Mother series as a whole. What makes the cast of Mother 3 special isn't any particular feat, but instead the depth of connection that's developed by simply existing together. The player is clearly taken into account here, and the final moments of the game are impactful on so many levels. The heart weeps for Klaus and Lucas and their parents. The final lines of text from the fight ripping at your heartstrings. As the world crumbles, watching simple things like the clayman who won't stop working pokes at your soul, you find yourself wondering if this truly was the only way. Is this really the end? There are a myriad of reasons I think this all connects to UTDR, so let's dissect them a bit. I'll start with the reveal of Klaus. By the time you reach the end, it is no longer even a question that the masked man is Klaus, but that's not the problem. The problem, much like we're seeing with the discussions of Death's Knight, is that we have no clue how sentient this person is or what to do about the situation. The roaring leading to the destruction of the world is clearly accepted and pretty obvious at this point, so something like the end of Chapter 4 should indicate to us, much like the Fifth Needle does in the plot of Mother 3, that she is not fucking around. The plot of Mother 3 doesn't feel as close to Deltarune specifically. Masked Man and Roaring Knight have connections in theory, but I think the connection that feels strangest to me is the connection between Leader's speech and the conditions of the underground. Like the Scratch was our main point of discussion for Homestuck, I think Leader's speech functions as our main point of discussion for Mother 3. This speech is insane. Sidetracking for a moment, I'd like to talk about the importance of the Ark to Deltarune's story. As you may know, Noah's Ark is a biblical tale of a great flood that comes to destroy the earth, where Noah is tasked with saving 2 of each animal aboard a great ship to ensure their ability to procreate and continue the world after the flood. There are many things currently alluding to the importance and the presence of this in Deltarune. In Raise Up Your Bat, one of the lyrics says, description for Pluie says, "It's raining cats and cats. Bring chosen ones to the Ark." This game also involves you carrying cats from one shelter to another. On top of these very weighty connections, Castletown seems to be functioning as an arc in its own right, with us attempting to bring over every Darkner that we can so that they can continue to live after their fountain is destroyed. With all of this in mind, doesn't the white ship seem incredibly interesting? Leader explains that it's not like the Nowhere Islands are fabricated, but the conditions are. He says, although Tazmily exists in reality, it was originally created as part of a story. This, coupled with his explanation of why people from Tazmily don't talk about world history from 100 or 1000 years ago, begins to make Undertale's shaky history make a lot more sense. This is made especially interesting when considering that in Deltarune we see a potential basis for this false history, Gerson's book, Humans and Monsters. Not only this, but it can clearly be reflected as an idea in Deltarune as well, with the varying history between the sanctuaries. We then arrive at the Hummingbird Egg, aka the Egg of Light. The connections here are a lot looser, but it's very interesting how the connection is drawn here between the egg and memories. We've seen now, especially with chapters 3 and 4, that the egg in Deltarune is being tied to memories and some sort of repression, the full nature of which is not currently quite understood. With the Forgotten Man giving us a direct connection to Mother, I wouldn't be surprised if the egg itself ends up looping back to being referential as well, even if only partially. The Underground, the area in Earthbound that you visit after you visit the Deep Darkness, also shares similarities with Man Country, including chunky, older-looking sprites and the ambiguous state of dinosaur life. The Nowhere Islands themselves being the one place that survived is also interesting to me. Isn't the end of Undertale kind of weird? We all know that Frisk fell from the surface, and we know that Asriel and Kara went back up there, but during the credits it seems bizarrely empty. The only characters we ever see are the same ones we spent the entire game with, almost as if there was nothing out there. When speaking about the result of the needles being pulled, Leader says, "All things may come to an end, or new and bountiful things may begin. Wouldn't you like to see it happen?" Returning to chapter 4 again, I find myself being reminded of the dialogue between Susie and Gerson about the end of the story. Gerson asks Susie how she wants it all to end, to which she replies, "An ending, huh? If I could choose, I guess I wouldn't have an ending." While I don't think Susie will be the one that ultimately pulls the trigger, I do think the presentation of these ideas is really important to consider. So, ultimately, where does this all leave us? As I said earlier, I think I have a clear sense of the timeline of UTDR, but I think now you can see a lot of my reasoning. Let's retrace our steps. With everything that's been established concerning worlds in UTDR, all of the things connecting the two games beginning to spill out as we got more of Deltarune seems to point towards some sort of disruption happening in time and space. While this was all airy for a while, with some people drawing connections between the games but still struggling, chapters 3 and 4 seem to imply that those who found the connections were on the right path. Now, with clear allusion to iterations upon a narrative changing aspects of it while retaining the core components, some things become illuminated. But of course, without more UTDR content, we have nowhere else to look except for Toby's influences. This led me to one of his biggest influences, Homestuck, which just so happens to be a creation story that iterates upon itself. We see aspects of this already being reflected, and the media itself has been referenced as well.
All these square glasses are inspired by John Egbert. Her red brisk shoes, she has a lot of elements from the trolls of Homestuck. LOL.
Gotcha.
I guess a muscular horse that attacks you with sweat is pretty Homestuck. This song was originally made for Homestuck. Jade Harley as Manticore.
In many more capacities than most people seem to realize. In Homestuck, I learned about the Scratch, an event that resets the universe of the narrative while also bringing about the creation of the greater evil, a double-edged sword. This event created a new universe that reflected the original universe of Homestuck, much in the way the settings of Undertale and Deltarune reflect one another. In an effort to explore these influences, and more influences, I also happened across Mother 3, a game about an isolated land whose inhabitants escaped from a dying world, erasing their memories in the process to start new lives. This reality felt like one that in many ways perfectly reflected the reality of Undertale, creating a through line for the two realities. This all brings us to my thoughts, finally, on how this all unfolds within UTDR's universe. The Roaring is being positioned to us as the big threat in most of the plot, but along with most people, I don't feel that it's the end-all be-all. It seems to be an earlier point in the story, maybe the point where things go wrong regardless of your route, something truly inevitable. What does seem avoidable, however, and like a complete disaster, is the weird route. With the prophecy, although unused, that says cold water fell from the top of the sky, as well as the presence of a blizzard of some kind taking place in both games' histories, the real disaster that the arc seems to be necessary for might be something involving snow. Noelle seems to find a lot of peace in the Dark World, asking during Chapter 2 why life can't just be like this. With the presence of escapism as a theme in the narrative, it's becoming clearer to me over time that we may have to help the members of this cast not run from their lives. Unfortunately, I think in the weird route, Noelle is, like Queen said, being led into a darker, yet darker dream. With her sister missing, her father passing slowly, and her relationship with her mother being such a deeply tumultuous one, convincing her that destruction is tied to power may lead her to destroy the world itself. I feel she would be so racked with grief after dealing with both Weird Route and her external problems that she would plunge the world into darkness in an attempt to save everyone. This darkness would be so great that it ultimately would become the barrier, leading to the creation of Undertale. With Undertale still having a history that predates the player, every timeline leads to the loss of one WD Gaster, which in turn leads to the player's connection to Deltarune via Gaster. This creates a stable loop, one that existed prior to us that can ultimately only be broken by the player's actions. Why? Because, well, ultimately, every choice matters.
But you've got it all.